and welcome to She Comes Bi, a podcast where I interrogate my friends about bisexuality. I'm your host, Alex Mannix. Since this is our first episode, I want to tell you why I started this podcast. I came out as bisexual about 13 years ago. Well, I was probably bi before that, but at least I realized I was bi 13 years ago, and that's when I started to use the word to describe myself. It just felt right. I was a freshman in college, I had a boyfriend, and had crushes on guys on campus. Sorry, boyfriend's name inserted here. But I was also realizing that I felt drawn to, wanted the attention of, and desired certain women on campus in a way I hadn't noticed before. Or at least, I hadn't felt called to name it as desire before. Then, the night of the biggest, most notoriously debaucherous party of the year, I proclaimed, "Tonight is the night I will make out with a woman." And friends, there was no denying it after that fateful night. I was, at the very least, some flavor of not straight. At the time, bisexual was the word that felt most comfortable for me to use. It accurately described my attraction to both men and women. It was a word that my parents knew and could understand when I came out to them, even if they didn't fully understand my experience. I had come into college pretty ignorant gender-wise. As my understanding of gender broadened to include non-binary and gender-expansive definitions, I began to feel more aligned with the term queer. It felt more inclusive of my crushes across the gender spectrum. I learned the term pansexual and felt it described me pretty well, but I still preferred queer or bi because they were more familiar to me at the time. Over the last 13 years, I've described myself as bi, pan, queer, or gay, depending on who I'm talking to or how I'm feeling at the time. How's that for indecisive? These four words have a lot of overlap for me, and I've come to understand each of them as an umbrella term in their own way. However, bisexual has come to be the word I am most drawn to and attracted to, and the one I use for myself most often. And I'm not alone. According to a March 2024 Gallup poll, quote, "Bisexuality is the most common LGBTQ+ status among Generation Z, Millennials, and Generation X," end quote. And our numbers are growing. The Gallup poll also found that, quote, 15% of all Generation Z adults, representing more than 2/3 of those with an LGBTQ+ identification, are bisexual, end quote. So, what does it mean to be the B in the LGBTQIA+ alphabet mafia? What does it really mean to be bisexual? Bi-curious? Bi-plus? What's the overlap between bisexuality, pansexuality, omnisexuality, queerness, heteroflexibility, fluid, and other words used to describe multisexuality? Is monosexual privilege a thing, or are we the privileged ones? How does our understanding of our sexuality intersect with our other identities? I wanted to start this podcast because I wanted to talk to my friends about their views and perceptions of bisexuality and sexuality in general. Because I wanted to share and promote Bi+ resources, news, media, and creators that I enjoy and that I find useful and informative. And because I wanted to create Bi community. I hope you'll come by and join me. So in this, our inaugural episode, I'm going to be interviewing Nat Roberts, who's joining us today from High Street in Highland Park. So on this show, I ask guests to introduce themselves. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Nat Roberts. Generally rolling with the they/them pronouns these days. I'm a Los Angeles-based film and TV professional, currently working at the Los Angeles Public Library and as a manager at a local video store. I've been out as some flavor of queer for about 7 years now. And yeah, came out as bi when I was 22. Generally these days I go for queer just as my word of choice, both for sexuality and gender purposes. Just feels like it gives me some room to maneuver, which is always appreciated. And I'm very happy to be here. Thank you for having me, Alex.
Yay. Thank you so much for joining us, Nat. Quick background, who are we to each other?
So we are buds. We are friends. Once upon a time, I co-hosted a movie podcast called Snails and Oysters with my good friend, Allie Rogers, who is also your good friend. Mm-hmm. And so when we covered the criminally underrated 2000s rom-com Imagine Me and You. Allie invited you to be on the show as our guest to talk about it because you love that movie, and I love that movie now, in part because of doing that episode. I think it was, I had moved to Los Angeles by the time we recorded that episode, right? And we started hanging out and quickly became like actual real life friends and not just people who had been on podcasts together.
So, again, you answered this a little bit, but yeah, what are you up to these days? You said you worked at the library. I also know you work at a very cool video store called Vidiots.
I do work at newly minted Eagle Rock institution, Vidiots, which for those of you not in LA and not in the niche physical media scene, Vidiots is started as a video rental store in 1985. It was one of the first like women owned and operated video stores, catered mostly to like cult films and obscure video artists, with a collection of, hundreds and hundreds of VHS tapes. Now it is thousands and thousands of DVDs and Blu-rays, and we are a nonprofit. And we moved from Santa Monica to Eagle Rock over the course of like 2017 to 2023, what with, that monkey wrench thrown in the middle. I started volunteering there in March of last year, and then just, they eventually hired me to work at the concession stand, then moved me over to the video store. It feels very anachronistic to say I'm a video store manager in year of our Lord 2025. But yeah, then my other job is as a clerk at the LA Public Library. Apart from that, I've got a partner with two small kids, who I spend a lot of time with. And I'm trying to work on a script allegedly right now. We'll see if that ever materializes. And yeah, I need to finish the short film that I've been working on and off for like 2 years now. Yeah, so I do a lot of things other than sleep, or like relax. Yeah.
Well, that's so cool. Well, I definitely want to like ask you more about like your creative stuff later, because I'm also a huge fan of your creative work. I got to see you have to sit here and hear me compliment you.
God, I should have anticipated this.
But I really do want to get into the real question, which you answered a little bit before, but I think bears asking it again. So Nat, are you bi? Why or why not?
That's such an excellent question, Alex. No, I actually feel some resonance with what you were saying in your lovely introduction to this episode.
Oh my God, thank you.
About how bi was sort of the word that I first felt like I could access and still feel a certain like pull towards. Like, to me, it like I said, these days I like queer for a lot of reasons, actually. One of which is that's what I got called as a kid, actually. Like when I was a kid in Virginia, I didn't get called like gay so much as I got called queer. Something about that just makes reclaiming or repurposing or, sort of adopting that word feels really satisfying to me. It feels like it speaks to my experience in a lot of ways. Cause like I made a joke about it giving me room to maneuver, but the ambiguity of it actually, where it's like, I don't actually have to give anybody an explanation of my dating habits. I can just be like, look, I'm a fruit. What do you want from me? Like, either you're cool with it or you're not. It's not like, you're going to be like, well, gay people are fine, but you bisexuals better get out of here, or something. I mean, there are people like that, but I don't know. They're such a small yet vocal group that I don't really care about them.
Yeah, absolutely.
In general, I find that people don't really distinguish between the LGBT, the L, the G, the B, the T, the Q, the plus.
If you don't like one of those groups,
you probably don't
and you're
like
straight,
any
you
of
probably
them.
don't like any of them.
Yeah. I mean, well, and it's worth like splitting the hair of like, there are plenty of people who are not homophobic, but are transphobic.
Yeah,
but
absolutely.
Generally, I find that they're also homophobic. They just don't really want to admit it, or they've learned not to admit it.
It's within the Overton window to be transphobic in this point in time, unfortunately, in our socio-political climate.
Did you see Gavin Newsom today was like, it's unfair for trans women to compete in women's sports. Yeah, I hate that man.
Bummer.
But to return to your very excellent question, Alex, I do still feel a certain affinity for bi as a label, even though I like my gender is queer, and I feel I used the phrase non-binary bisexual earlier a bit tongue in cheek, but like there is like a funny dissonance to those words, if nothing else. But for me, bisexuality was never about like binary gender. It was more about like being attracted to more than one gender expression, more than one vibe. Like to me, being bi means being attracted to the masculine and feminine in everybody. Like even the cis people I'm attracted to often it's, I'm attracted to I'm attracted to all of them, and like even the things that our society doesn't code as their gender, whatever those may be, depending on the person. Like I was going to say something about Jungian psychology, of course.
Oh my God, incredible.
But no, for me, part of like my gender experience was like helped along a bit by reading some Jung and understanding the concept of the anima or the animus a little more clearly. So Jung had this idea of archetypes, which are like, it's very similar to what we today would call internal family systems, where you're like talking about fucking love internal family systems, where you're thinking about like kind of the different characters in your personality, because nobody's really one person all the time every day. We all have different roles we play and different voices that we channel like throughout our lives. And so the way he sort of conceptualized that was as these archetypes, these like very mythic, simplistic, but potent symbols. Like the shadow is probably the most well known these days, where it's all of the things in you that you repress, it's or find completely unacceptable, like and that's not necessarily negative things. It could be like if you're a very self-effacing person, it could be your confidence. It could be, if you're a very self-sacrificing person, it could be, the part of you that wants to just say no and take care of yourself, or like, it can be many things. But another one of those is the ego, which is sort of the thinking self, not like the conceited self, but like the part of you that talks about you.
Yeah.
But the one that's actually relevant right now, which I should probably get to, is the anima or animus, which is sort of the opposite sex part of your personality. So if you're assigned female, it's the male part of you. If you're assigned male, it's the female part of you. We often talk about like your feminine side or your inner woman, or, your masculine side, if, as the case may be. And sort of reading that and then thinking about like integrating all of those archetypes into one person, into one cohesive personality, I realized like, oh, isn't it just that we all have the qualities that we have, and then our society codes some of them as one gender or another, depending on when we happen to be born, where we happen to be born, what the fashions currently are. And so really, to me, that was like a big step in like embracing the idea of gender queerness, where it's like, oh no, like I have all of these things inside of me that are masculine, that are feminine, that aren't either, and like ultimately it's all me all at once. It's kind of why I always enjoyed they them pronouns like that. Even though it confuses people, the like singular plural thing, like the plurality of it really speaks to my experience of like, yeah, I feel like I have a few different people inside me at any different time. And not just on a Saturday night. Am I right? Am I right, fellas?
Wow, incredible. Incredible. You're actually the first person, like, because I've been familiar with they, them pronouns for a while, but like the thing I usually hear people say, it's like, well, it's the singular they, them. It's like the new, kind of like the neutral, the gender neutral version, or kind of, yeah.
Totally.
But I think you're the first person to ever say the idea of like, I like using they, them pronouns because it hints at that plurality and that faceted element of my personality and of my selfhood. Like, that's beautiful.
Thank you.
That's so cool.
I also kind of like that it trips people up, because like, I think that like gender is so normalized when you stop to think about it, is a completely abnormal thing to do. And so like, I think having that moment of just forcing somebody to think a little bit about gender for a second is like fun. And like, I don't know, culture jammy.
Yeah, well, I agree. And my experience with this now has been, because I think within the past 2 years, I like started using any pronouns. And I still, to be continued, more will be revealed, but like totally. I identify as a cis woman.
Yeah.
But I use any pronouns in part because, for 31 years of my life, I presented very, not like high femme, but like, tomboyish, but like very girl. Like I had
solidly coded
female girl. I had long hair. I was long hair queer.
That's really what we're talking about.
Right. We're talking about the length of my hair.
But it is insane how like much that affects. I feel like more so for assigned female people. I don't know. I guess it goes back and forth depending on the fashion. Right now, it is in fashion for even cis straight men to have long hair, I think, post-pandemic. Probably going to change in the next few years as the culture swings.
Right. Totally.
To the right. But, yeah. But anyway, yes.
Anyway, so about 2 years ago now, I did the chop. I went from like, waist length hair to a full... or to a pixie cut, not quite shaved, but like the sides of my head were shaved and I had like a little bit on top, and I remember like, and I didn't change anything about like the way I dressed, the way I walked, the way I talked, the way I like thought of myself. And immediately I could see every person I talked to who was a stranger like not know what pronoun to use for me. They were like, hi, like it just was a full, like, I was like, oh, this is made up.
Yeah.
Like, because there is nothing different about me besides the length of my hair and no one knows what the fuck to do.
Yeah.
Or they do.
Fried their brains.
I have fried their brains. Or it's like, I saw them not know what pronouns to use for me. I saw them observe me as someone who was playing with gender. And not that I wasn't, but I had never been perceived that way before.
Yeah.
And so,
it's funny. It's like, what does it take? What's the straw that breaks the camel's back for you to like, because those norms are so hardwired by our culture that it's like, what does it take for somebody who doesn't question gender to even acknowledge that gender can be questioned a little bit?
Totally.
Where like, I still mostly get sir, dude, ma'am, what have you. Even as I'm more and more intentionally being like, as I wear like eyeliner and nail polish and try to dress more and present more, like androgynous at least, it is funny how much flexibility there is in most people's conception of what like a queer man is. And so it's like, I am still categorized as man, even if I'm in that sort of like annex of manhood that is the like fruits and vegetables and everybody who's like failing at being masculine, quote unquote, which actually that reminds me of something my roommate Molly Spina, shout out, podcast producer herself, Molly Spina.
Oh my god,
Molly pointed out the other day. She introduced me to this really interesting thought experiment, or not thought experiment, just sort of social observation called the elevator order, which I don't know if she coined it or if she like had read it somewhere else. But
we can give it to her.
I'm gonna give it to her because like she deserves it. She's very smart and like probably came up with this. But it's the order in which people board and exit an elevator in terms of gender presentation, age, fatness versus skinniness, and like the sort of social hierarchy that forms of like the most conventionally attractive, most conventionally feminine woman exits first. It's a sort of deference thing. And then you sort of work down the totem pole into, miscellaneous people who are sort of, either, elderly or, are fat, are queer, are not particularly macho or feminine, this sort of like no man's land in some ways, literally. And then you get like, then it sort of horseshoes around into the most masculine goes out last because he is sort of like, oh yes, after you, my people, please allow me. And
the
so
chivalry of it all.
Exactly. Or he gets out first because he fucking wants to, whatever. That's sort of the wild card. But yeah, there is like it's like a social game. It's a little hierarchy of everybody. Nobody talks about it. Nobody acknowledges it, but everybody kind of falls in line with, well, this is what we do. Like, this is how it works. And like, it is like really interesting.
And I think like around like perceptions or hierarchies or like whatever, I think it's now fun when people ask me my pronouns, I'm like, oh, I like any pronouns. And I've started to get like one of two reactions. One is like, okay, but like, do you have a preference? Like, because I think they think, oh, I want like they, them, or I want something that's not she, her, but I'm afraid to say it. And like, when I investigate, I'm like, I used she, her for, again, 31 years. So it's just like, that is something that feels the most familiar.
Oh, yes.
But also, it's more interesting to me what you use for me than like, because it doesn't, and it doesn't affect my understanding of myself, how you perceive me. Yeah. It's just like information, and it feels like something that, it feels like information about like what I'm presenting as opposed to what I am internally.
Absolutely.
And I want to be careful because, again, I'm a cis woman. I think I carry a lot of privileges, like that I'm a thin, white, cis woman. So I think I try to be conscious that, pronouns are like really important, gender identity, like markers and gender expression for a lot of people.
Absolutely.
So I never want to say like, oh, I'm not one of those like pronoun havers. Like
no. But there it's also worth noting the way that pronouns have been kind of co-opted into neoliberal corporate speak as a way to observe gender diversity without having to actually address gender diversity. And so like rebelling against that does feel in keeping with like good queer values, for lack of a better term. Like there is like a sentiment of like your pronouns are not your gender, which I think is very accurate, not because your pronouns aren't important or aren't part of your gender or can't be important or you shouldn't be sensitive, but because so many fucking other things are too. And like so often people want to use the right pronouns as they still treat you like shit. They want to put a nice face on still perpetuating cis heteropatriarchy. But they want to still benefit from the status quo without looking like it, without feeling bad about it, without, being one of the bad straights. I also really enjoy letting people gender me and seeing what they come up with, because it's like a fun way to be like, oh, if I do this, it reads as. If I stand like this, it reads as. If I modulate my voice like this, it reads as. Because like, for me at least, like my ideal gender situation would be being a shapeshifter. Like I would really rather just be able to go back and forth depending on what I'm feeling in the morning. Like, there's actually a really great book that I read last year called Paul Takes the Form of a Mortal Girl by Andrea Lawler. That really felt like it kind of, how to put it bluntly, nailed my gender trouble to the wall. Where it's about this sort of fantasy, gender fantasy, sexual picaresque, where it's this character who, doesn't matter why, can shapeshift. Living in the like 90s queer scene, starting in Iowa City, then moving to Provincetown, then moving to San Francisco. Like it's kind of a like meandering novel. And it's about them kind of taking on different personas, different gender presentations, and having lots of different kinds of kinky sex in those presentations. And like it, but it's also ultimately this really beautiful, affirming piece about like the main character is my favorite kind of hero, which is a little bit scummy, and a little bit of a like ne'er-do-well, but with a heart of gold. And so there is this element of accepting like, hey, like, yeah, I am like kind of a messy slut, and like I love being a messy slut. Like that's actually not a defect. That is something I like about myself. You know, I don't want to spoil it, but like the last line of the book is something along the lines of like, you know, something about enjoying a city that is as multifaceted as you are.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah. It's really beautiful. And actually, funnily enough, like another great example of my like ideal gender situation is also sci-fi. It's Star Trek. There are so many episodes. I mean, not so many, but more than you would expect from a 90s network sci-fi series where like, I remember a Deep Space Nine episode where one of the characters is like, oh, like I really need like a female accomplice to seduce this guy, but I can't get one. I know I will have gender switching surgery for the length of this episode. Fuck this guy to get what I need, and then I'll switch back between episodes with like no problem. Like it was not the only time. Obviously, it was not the only time this technology came up where it's just like, oh yeah, we can just like flip you back and forth gender wise, like, you know, 10 a.m. switch and then 2 p.m. switch back. Like no problem, no recovery. Like you're up and walking. And I was like, yeah, that sounds pretty rad. That seems pretty good to me. I'll take that. Yeah. So it's you know. I feel like that is more and more like a like touchstone for gender queer or non-binary or fluid folks, is like the idea of the shapeshifter or like the sort of like fairy tale monster, and like reclaiming that part, which I also enjoy.
Well, Nat, I could talk to you for hours and hours and hours, but
And
I
have.
but I know you have a very, very busy schedule.
Yes, my partner's eldest is sick, so I'm going over to hang out with him while they go to a parent-teacher conference for the little one.
That is so sweet.
Just my glamorous LA life.
That's adorable. You're wow, incredible. But so I am now going to ask you if you want to play a very silly.
Want to play a game? Mm-hmm. I do. I always do.
So this game comes to us from my dear friend Nkechi.
We love Nkechi.
We love
Shout out
Nkechi.
Nkechi.
Shout out, not only shout out, if you're listening, Nkechi is a WGA TV writer and actor available for casting and staffing. So if you're looking, she's very smart and has very good ideas. So please hire her.
She is very charming and charismatic too.
Absolutely. And she comes up with great games.
Yes.
So this game comes to us.
Also, she's tall. Like
she's tall. She's beautiful.
She's gorgeous. Oh
gosh.
my God. That's funny.
She's so funny. She's so smart. She's so pretty.
Yeah.
She did say when I asked her what should the credit be, she like gave me the WGA thing to say, and then she was like, and then give me a compliment. So Nkechi, here you go.
We tick that box.
So many compliments. I will never stop complimenting her. She's incredible. Anyway, so Nat, would you like to play a very silly game?
Oh my God, I'd love nothing more.
So this game is called Gay, Straight, Bi. I'm going to give you 3 things, and you have to tell me which of them is gay, which of them is straight, and which of them is bi.
Wow, I can't believe you would ask me to like foist a sexual orientation onto something that didn't identify itself. But okay, Alex, I guess if those are the rules of the game, I have no choice.
They are. So your 3 things are VHS, DVD, and streaming.
Wow. Such a specific question. Wow, I love this. I did not see this coming. So it's VHS, DVD, and streaming.
Yep, gay, straight, bi.
You know, it's funny. I'm so tempted to say streaming is bi because of the fluidity inherent in it.
Oh, okay.
But I also think that it's not that I hate streaming. I just hate the way it is now. So I wanted to like discourage people from doing it the way it is now. So I'm going to say it's straight. Actually, no, that's unfair. Because there are some good streamers, like Criterion Channel and Mubi are very good. I'm going to say streaming's bi.
Okay, great.
I'm going to say DVD is straight because it is just, I mean, this is purely generational where it's like, to me, DVD is bog standard. Like, I grew up with VHS for like a hot minute as a kid, but by the time I was like 7 or so, my mom was like an early Netflix adopter, and like we were getting the DVDs in the mail, and we started phasing out our VHS collection. And then I'm going to say VHS is gay because I work at a very gay video store and we have plenty of gay smut on VHS in our archive still that needs to get digitized. DVD could also be bi. I don't know that there's, I mean, maybe Laserdisc is straight or Betamax.
I don't know what those things are, so I will take your word for it.
So Laserdisc was like sort of the failed DVD alternative.
Isn't that Blu-ray?
Well, no, Blu-ray is kind of the successor to DVD. There are some advantages to okay. So for a standard consumer DVD and Blu-ray, it's functionally the same. It's just a question of whether or not you have a Blu-ray player which can play both or a DVD player which can only play DVD.
Oh, so Blu-ray really is bi.
It's true. Exactly. Blu-ray players are certainly bi. And the ostensibly Blu-ray is higher quality. Depending on your TV setup, it may not matter. But the real difference is Blu-ray is more durable. Anyway.
Incredible. I'm learning so much today.
Physical media, super relevant.
Incredibly relevant to you, to me, to our listeners.
Hopefully.
To our producer, Josh, who's currently holding a physical newspaper.
I don't even fuck with that. That is too old school physical media from this girl.
And I work in radio, so.
Ooh.
Nat, thank you so much for coming by.
Alex, thank you so much for having me.
She Comes Bi is part of the Industry Plant Podcast Network. It's hosted by me, Alex Mannix, and edited and executive produced by Josh Stretten-Carlson. If you're interested in more bisexual content, check out the She Comes Bi weekly newsletter at shecomesbiweekly.substack.com. That's shecomesbiweekly.substack.com.